Beneath the quiet streets of Bangor, Maine, the drains run deep. Water slides into the dark, just as it did in Stephen King's imagination when he wrote the opening scene of It. The town of Derry may be fictional, but its bones, its landmarks, and its haunted history are carved straight from Bangor. Tonight, we peel back the layers of this small New England city to discover how it became the beating heart of one of the most terrifying stories ever told. In the late 1970s, Stephen King was no longer just a small-town English teacher who had struck lightning with Carrie. He had become a cultural force. His success gave him the means to choose where he and his family would live. And he chose Bangor, Maine. Bangor, with its riverside mills, its rugged downtown, and its history of logging and hard living, was not the quaint postcard version of New England. It was tougher, darker, more complex. King once described it as the kind of place where a man could step out of a bar, pick a fight in the street, and be forgotten by morning. It was this sense of grit, this undercurrent of menace, that drew him to set his most sprawling and terrifying story here. When King began to write it, he needed a fictional stage large enough to hold the weight of centuries of evil, yet intimate enough that every alley, bridge, and drain could feel familiar to his readers. Bangor became that stage. With a few twists of the imagination, he rechristened it Derry. But Derry wasn't just a copy of Bangor. It was Bangor exaggerated, sharpened, and haunted. The city's geography, from its rolling neighborhoods to the Kenduskeag stream that cuts straight through its center, provided King with a ready-made map. He infused it with supernatural dread, creating a town where the ordinary became uncanny and where evil could seep into every corner. Every town has a place where children retreat from adults, a secret landscape where their friendships take root. In it, that place is the Barrens. The Barrens are not an invention. They are drawn from the Kenduskeag stream, a narrow valley that winds through the center of Bangor. To most passers-by, it's just another piece of city geography, a stream running beneath bridges tucked between neighborhoods. But to King, it became a sanctuary and a stage for childhood. In the novel, the Losers Club finds refuge along its muddy banks. They build a dam, share their fears, and forge the bonds that will allow them to face the unimaginable. The stream becomes a symbol of innocence, but also of danger, for it is here, in the shadows of the water and under the looming bridges, that evil stirs. Reality lent King more than scenery. In 1984, tragedy struck along this very stream when a young man named Charlie Howard was attacked and murdered by 3 teenagers, thrown from the State Street Bridge into the Kenduskeag. King, already working on it, could not ignore the echo. The crime reflected the real cruelty lurking beneath small-town surfaces. And its shadow fell across the story he was telling. The Kenduskeag is more than background. It is the living pulse of Bangor, the artery that shaped Derry. Its waters run shallow, but in King's imagination they plunge into a darkness without end. Derry feels alive because its landmarks feel real. King didn't build them from scratch. He borrowed directly from Bangor's skyline. On the hill above the city stands the Thomas Hill Standpipe, a massive water tower built in 1897. To King, it was more than infrastructure. In the novel, the standpipe becomes a place of childhood terror, a looming symbol of how the ordinary can become ominous. Visitors today say they can still feel its weight, towering white and silent over the streets below. Across town sits a figure impossible to ignore, a 31-foot Paul Bunyan statue in Bass Park. Tourists smile and take photos, but in it, Richie sees this friendly giant come to life, swinging its axe with murderous intent. The shift from folk hero to nightmare is classic King, turning Americana into menace. And then there is perhaps the most famous landmark of all, a storm drain at the corner of Jackson and Union Streets. To Bangor residents, it is a simple curbside grate. But in King's imagination, it became the gateway to horror. Here, little Georgie Denbrough met Pennywise for the first time, his paper boat lost to the water, and to the dark promise that we all float down here. These places are not hidden. Anyone can drive past the standpipe, walk beneath Paul Bunyan's gaze, or glance at the drain where fans still leave yellow balloons. They are stitched into Bangor's fabric. But in it, King transformed them into icons of dread, landmarks forever haunted by the shadows of Derry. Among Bangor's grand Victorian houses, one in particular has become almost as famous as its owner. At 47 West Broadway, a red brick mansion with iron gates crowned by bats and spiders marks the home where Stephen King lived through the height of his career. To fans, the house is nearly mythical, an emblem of the man who gave Derry life. But for King, it was simply home, the place where he raised his children, the study where he typed out some of his most enduring works, and the vantage point from which he watched the rhythms of Bangor unfold. The gates themselves are a spectacle. Black iron shaped into winged bats, creeping spiders and webs stretch across the entrance, as if warning visitors that imagination and darkness dwell inside. Over the years, crowds of fans made pilgrimages to this spot, pressing against the fence to glimpse the House of Horror's creator. In 2019, King and his wife Tabitha announced that the property would take on a new role as a writer's retreat and archive for future generations. It was a gesture both practical and poetic. The house that once inspired whispers and curiosity would now shelter creativity, a place where new voices might grow from the soil of Bangor, just as King's once did. Though it never appears in it, the house on West Broadway embodies the same spirit, ordinary on the outside, extraordinary within. A reminder that behind the curtains of a quiet New England street, entire worlds of terror and imagination can be born. When it first leapt from the page to the screen in 1990, audiences saw Derry brought to life through television sets across America. Yet many of the film's exteriors were shot far from Maine. Later adaptations, including the blockbuster films of 2017 and 2019, used Port Hope, Ontario, as their backdrop. For some fans, this came as a surprise. Why not film in Bangor itself? The answer is partly practical. Filmmakers needed the tax incentives, controlled locations, and cinematic facades of Canada. But even on foreign streets, the ghost of Bangor was always present. Take Port Hope's downtown, standing in for Derry's city center. For locals, the red brick storefronts and quaint facades echoed their own town. Yet for readers, the streets were instantly recognizable because Bangor's blueprint was already imprinted in their minds. When Richie confronts the towering Paul Bunyan in the 2019 film, audiences knew the source was not Port Hope's plaza, but Bangor's statue standing watch at Bass Park. Bangor and Derry exist in a strange duality. One is flesh and stone, with rivers, mills, and street corners any tourist can visit. The other is a haunted double, where drains swallow children, statues come alive, and a cycle of terror resurfaces every generation. It's this duality that keeps fans returning to Bangor. Even if Hollywood dresses other towns as Derry, the real one, the true Derry, still waits along the Kenduskeag, still towers over Union Street, still peers out from behind a Victorian gate. Bangor is the beating heart of King's nightmare. From storm drains to statues, from quiet streams to towering standpipes, Bangor, Maine became the canvas for Stephen King's darkest creation. In these streets he found the bones of a fictional town called Derry, a place forever haunted by the laughter of a clown and the courage of the Losers Club. Thank you for joining us on this journey into the real-world origins of it. If you enjoyed exploring the shadows of Bangor with us, don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and ring the bell so you won't miss our next dive into horror and true crime. Until next time, remember, the line between fiction and reality may be closer than you think.